Welcome to another episode of GarageBand Weekly here on Studio Live today. Yes, this is our live weekly show all about the world of GarageBand, or as I say, 30 minutes for me to rant about one of my favorite topics. Either way you look at it, it's all good. If you're not sure who I am and what this is, my name is Pete, and this is Studio Live today, which is my home here on YouTube, on Facebook, on the internet, where I help you create, record, and release your best music. And I do that through tips and tricks and tutorial videos and live streams just like this one. So, if that sounds like your kind of bag, and unlike me, you can finish sentences, then consider subscribing. We've got a bunch of folks here live on YouTube and Facebook today. Hello to Douglas, Jade, Andre, B. Sling. We've got Michael, we've got Steve, David, Mitchell, Alex, Harry. Hello, everybody. Great to have you here. Ray, Rick, Jonah. Lots of folks here live to chat too. So, if you have anything that you want to contribute and you are here live, then drop it in the chat and I will swing by. And if you have GarageBand questions or GarageBand related comments, then we'll talk about those. If you are watching on the replay, don't worry. I love you just as much. All you need to do is drop a comment in the comment section, either on YouTube or on Facebook, and I will definitely get back to you if you've got questions or if you've got comments about the wonderful world of GarageBand. All right, what are we covering in this week's show? We're talking about a few things. We're talking about how many tracks GarageBand can handle. We're talking some new music from an artist here in Australia, how to record mics and guitars. And my rant of the week is going to be all about is GarageBand only for beginners? I think you know which way I'm going to go, but that will be something that will be fun to talk about. But what has been in the news of the GarageBand world in the last week? Well, yeah, there hasn't been anything major. We haven't had any updates. We haven't had any amazing killer apps that have been released because it's been the first week of January. It's been a little bit quiet in terms of anything actually going on. There's a lot of the sales on apps and things have kind of calmed down, so there's not a whole lot happening, especially in the iOS world. And in the Mac world, we are way overdue for some sort of major update. I know that Patrick over at the GarageBand Guide, whenever a new update comes out, I think the last two have been bug fixes, and there's basically been nothing added to GarageBand for Mac for a while. So, if you're a GarageBand Mac user, yeah, let me know what you think. What features do you think need to come to GarageBand, or will they leave GarageBand as a cut down version because they really want you to buy Logic? That's what a lot of people think. So. We will talk about that later in the show, but excuse me a moment. Dear, oh dear. The joys of being live here, and I do have a little bit of a head cold, so I apologise in advance for my more nasally than usual voice. And the occasional coughing fit. Alrighty, so in the news, well, in the GarageBand related stuff, I guess. Shout out to, actually, what I'll say first is that the places that I get most of my sort of GarageBand news and views and topics and comments and conversations is the GarageBand users Facebook group. So if you're not already a member and you are on Facebook, hit that up. Just search GarageBand users. It's the biggest and best group of GarageBand enthusiasts online. More than 5,000 people there. The other place that's actually very cool, and I don't mean to say actually very cool, is the Reddit GarageBand. The GarageBand subreddit. You can see I'm a big Redditor. So that's another great place where folks are sharing their music made in GarageBand and also sharing tips and tricks and asking questions. So, but collectively between those two, there are literally thousands of GarageBand enthusiasts. And if you've ever asked me a question that's been too curly and that I haven't known the answer to, you've probably been sent to one of those two places. Anyway. There was an interesting question thrown up there by Mark Kemp, and it was this: how many tracks can GarageBand handle before it starts to struggle? And it's an interesting one because GarageBand itself, the iOS version, is 32 tracks maximum. So that's 32 complete tracks. Stereo tracks are 2 tracks. And I do get up around 32 tracks sometimes, but a lot of the music I produce is more singer-songwriter, more rock music. I might use 12 to 16 tracks most of the time. I don't have a whole lot of layering of things and backing vocals and that sort of thing. But a lot of people do. A lot of people use a lot more tracks than that and get to the point where they have to merge down. So I talked about merging on a previous show. Merging is on iOS is the act of taking a track or multiple tracks and merging them down, basically mixing them down to one stereo audio track. So if you've got, say, 4 backing vocals and you want to mix them down to one stereo track, you can save yourself a couple of tracks, etc. So that is a good way to reduce the number of tracks. What it comes down to, though, is how much processing is needing to be done and how fast and the speed of the processor of your iOS device. So if you are using an iPhone XS, you're going to be able to rock 32 tracks, or an iPhone 11 even. I keep saying, oh, iPhone XS. I realize it's now the old one. If you're rocking a newer iPhone, 32 tracks, it's going to be no problem. Even if you've got a bunch of effects on there and you've got a bunch of other automation and other things happening, if you're using something a little older, say you're using an iPad Air 2, then it's not going to be as responsive. Once you hit sort of past that 20 track mark with a lot of effects on there, it's not necessarily going to run as smoothly, and you may get more optimizing performance. So yes, we all love that optimizing performance pop-up, don't we? Yes. So yes, that's the thing. With the Mac, I'd love to hear from you. So let me know. How many tracks can you put on a Mac version of GarageBand? This is a question that I should know the answer to. Is it still 32? I thought it was still 32. Let me know if you are a Mac user. Let me know here in the live chat or in the comments how you get on. Do you struggle when you get to a certain number of tracks? Is there a magic number that that things go awry? A little bit of coffee, a little bit of a cough, coffee and cough. All right, another topic that came up during the week is setting up to record with a microphone. So whether you're setting up to record a guitar, an acoustic guitar, or your own voice, how do you actually go about that? What are some of your options for recording a microphone? Now, a lot of folks come to me and they say, Pete, I've got either a Mac or I've got an iPhone or an iPad that has a headphone jack. This one doesn't, but it does have the adapter for a headphone jack. And what they're trying to do is get a microphone and adapt it. So they're trying to plug the 1/4-inch cable from a microphone or an XLR cable into an 1/8 inch or a 3.5 mm jack, and then plug that into here and then record. Now, there's a few problems with that. Number one problem is you're not going to be able to monitor. So you're not going to be able to plug headphones in at the same time as trying to plug a microphone in. So you won't hear that back unless you have what is a TRS to TRRS adapter, which is one that plugs into your headphone jack and then has a mic and a headphone input. So if you have something like that, you can technically record with a microphone. Here's the problem. Microphones don't have any amplification built into them. So to record with a microphone, what you will generally need is something called a preamp or a preamplifier. And the beauty part of that is that any of your audio interfaces do have preamps built in. So anything from, I don't have my props handy, anything from the little iRig Pre devices, the Tascam IXZ that do plug in still through the 3.5 mm jack, right up to your USB audio interfaces and your iRigs that plug in via Lightning, all of those that have a microphone input. So basically, if it's got an XLR, those round ones with the 3 pins, if it's got an XLR input on it, it's going to have a preamp. You're going to be able to turn up the gain to record your microphone. Now that's super important because if you just try using something like an iRig, so one with a 1/4-inch input, even though some microphones have a 1/4-inch jack, you might think, hey, 1/4 inch, plug it in, go. Problem is, you're not getting that amplification. So if you've ever tried this, if you've ever tried something like that and you're getting a really low level signal, I think that's what was happening for whomever it was asking this question, is that they were trying to plug into an iRig or some sort of device like that, and they'll say, how do I get a louder signal through here? Well, the answer is a preamp. And a preamp is going to be in your audio interface. So if you are looking to record either on your Mac or your PC even, or your iPhone or iPad, get a microphone and get an audio interface that has a preamp. And if you go to studiolivetoday.com/gear, you will find all the recommended devices that I use, that I trust, that are the bomb diggity. So I hope that helped you out. I'll just see if we've got anyone who's given me any help. No one's confirmed. No one's confirmed what how many tracks there are in GarageBand Mac. Must be all iOS users like me here today. Rightio. The third news and note here. Now, I don't talk a lot about music created in GarageBand on this show because there is literally so much that is created that I feel if I mention like two or three, then there's going to be like 20 people that are going to email me saying, what about my music? I want, talk about me. So I try not to talk about anyone, but occasionally someone's music will pop up and I'll just be blown away. It'll be either exactly the sort of music I like or the production or the quality is just really, really good. And that is the case with this one. Artist called Peazy, which is a page over on the GarageBand users Facebook group, shared a track called Afterlife, and it is really, really good. So a lot of folks do this. So a page sort of dropped the track and put it there and just said, this is something I've created. Just want to say thanks to all the people in the GarageBand users Facebook group for your support. I've learned heaps doing this. And then a few of us listened to the track and someone actually asked the question. They're like, is this in GarageBand? And Paige said, yeah, it's in my bedroom, just created in GarageBand. And it's one of those things that in that group, there are some times where people will come into the group, they'll go, oh, a group of GarageBand users, 5,000 members, and they'll just paste a link to their Spotify and say, listen to my track. And then you ask a few questions and say, was this produced in GarageBand? And they go, oh, no, I recorded in Pro Tools and sent it to an engineer and then it was mastered in a mastering studio and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, the point is that the GarageBand groups are for GarageBand creators who are creating music in GarageBand. So, when someone produces and shares something of this caliber, yeah, it is always really cool. So I will link to Paige's track down in the description. If you're watching live, it's not there yet, but I'll pop it in there afterwards. If you're watching on the replay, it should be there by now. But if you search for Peazy, Peazy, and the track Afterlife, she has two other tracks on there, both really good. And she's from here in Australia too. Not that that matters, but I always love a success story of someone, especially when they are local from down under. Let's move on to the rant of the week. And this week, it's actually pretty related to what I was just talking about there with the whole, no, I didn't use GarageBand, I used something else. And that is this question. So I'm going to throw it out there to those who are here live, and if you're watching on the replay, you can answer it as well. Is GarageBand for beginners? I'll just let that sit for a moment. Is GarageBand for beginners? Or maybe a better question is GarageBand just for beginners? The reason I ask this is that for the many years that I've been using GarageBand to create music, there's a very constant trend, which is that folks learn GarageBand, they start using it, and then they get to a point where they say something like this, I think I've graduated from GarageBand. I think I need to move on to something more professional. So, and look, GarageBand does itself no favors by being called GarageBand, right? So it kind of has that entry-level beginner feel to it by its name. But as those of you that use GarageBand on the daily know, the feature set that it has now is as advanced as many other professional digital audio workstations, because what do you really need when you're producing music? Well, you need the ability to record 24-bit 44.1 kilohertz audio. Yep, GarageBand has that on the Mac and on the iPhone and the iPad. You need lots of tracks, as we talked about before. You've got 32 tracks to record. You need the effects. You need the ability to automate. You need the ability to master. All of those things can be achieved and accomplished in GarageBand. So what is the actual difference? Well, in my view, I'll spoil it here for you. In my view, the difference is just the workflow. So when people say, I want to use different software because I want my music to sound better, or I want, or it's going to be more professional. In my view, those aren't good reasons. The good reasons are I've hit the level of limitations with GarageBand that there's things I want to do that it can't do. So I want to automate my effects. I want to add a filter sweep and automate that filter, and GarageBand simply won't allow that. That is cool. Or the workflow for my music, the beats that I produce are much better in FL Studio, or it's much better for me in Beatmaker 3 to produce the music that I want to produce. Therefore, I'm using that. Those are good reasons. I just worry that some people, and look, I've thought this and I've felt this as well. Some people are using GarageBand and then they hit a point where they're like, if I want to get serious, if I want to be professional with my music, I can't use GarageBand. And yeah, I won't lie and say there isn't a stigma attached with GarageBand. So if you were collaborating with someone else and they're like, yeah, man, I've got my Pro Tools HD rig and I'll send you over my Pro Tools file, and you say, Thanks, but could you just mix those down as some stems so that I can import them into GarageBand? Yeah, there is a certain amount of stigma associated with that. And some people will look down on you. The people that look down on GarageBand probably haven't used GarageBand either ever or within the last 3 to 4 years. So they're not aware. It's kind of not their fault. They're not aware that it is just a full featured digital audio workstation. They're still thinking about the Steve Jobs video in 2011 or whatever it was. Earlier than that, wasn't it? Yeah. GarageBand Mac's been around longer than that. Where was it? Again, GarageBand Mac users, stand up and let me know, help me out here. But yeah, that the video that he got up there with John Mayer and Steve Jobs is like pressing a button and he's adding some funky sort of jazz backing and he's saying, yeah, this is the software for non-musicians to create music. And I think it was when it was released. And I think over time though, it has evolved and musicians have gotten hold of it and realized that what it actually does, and I'm preaching to the choir here, right? What it actually does though is it removes the barriers of the technology and of the complexity around recording stuff. So a lot of people have said to me when they've moved from, say, GarageBand to Reaper on their PC or to Logic even, they say that they miss the fact that with GarageBand, you pick it up, you say create new song, you choose what you're recording and you start recording. And yes, some people hate the way it like holds your hand and it will automatically put a lead vocal effect on your vocals. It'll automatically put an acoustic guitar with some reverb and some delay if you select acoustic guitar. I kind of like that. I tend to find that I use those presets and then afterwards I'll go back and if I need to completely change it, I can completely change it. But instead of recording everything 100% clean, having to set up each individual track and work out things like routing from inputs to outputs and all that sort of thing, it's plug in, select whether you want your guitar or your mic, and then record and go. So that is my 2 cents. And that is what I think. So is GarageBand for beginners? Yes. Is GarageBand just for beginners? No, that would be my view. But your view may vary, so I would love to hear what you have to say. Let's see if anyone else. So Jade says GarageBand is for anybody who wants to make music. Yeah, 100%. Yes, I agree. Barry Smith, when are they going to put a master effect for the tracks in GarageBand for iOS 13? That is definitely one of the things that needs to be added. There is the ability to add a master track in, well, there is a hack. Let me show you this. Let me show you this hack real quick here. So I'm going to open up a track. I'm going to open up a track here in GarageBand. And this is a bad example because it only has one track on there. But what you can do is if you go to the FX here, and if you just hit record, and we'll just add in some effects blah, 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 on that beat. What you can now do, we'll just turn the effects off. We can delete these effects, bump, delete. And I've showed this in videos before. So if you search Pete John's master volume or Pete John's, FX volume, now I've got this FX track here. And this can actually act as our master volume track because if we go into the settings here, we can actually go into, well, echo and reverb, didn't want that. We can go into the visual EQ here. And what the visual EQ actually has is a volume slider. So if you want to turn the volume down on your overall track, but you don't want to change the volume on each individual track, add FX, drop the volume, or if you want to raise the volume, raise the volume. And this can be really good. I do this. I put the volume down about 5 or 10 dB when I finished a track because the auto normalization that GarageBand does tends to have less impact if the volume is lower. So I drop the volume down there, and then when you come back to your track here, everything is down without having to do individual faders of each individual track. So that also, I say all of that to say, Barry, yes, I hope that they add in because it's clearly possible for them to have a track that impacts all tracks because that's what the FX track does, but they just haven't built it in there yet. So yes, I also hope that it goes through there. Jade, I will always use GarageBand even though I use Audio Pro and Cubase's. So I'll always use for the best and the easiest. Yeah, absolutely. Josh Gates Music, hello to you. I appreciate you being here. Thanks for the great interview on the weekend. Excuse me, sorry. If you're just joining me, I have a bit of a head cold, so I apologise for the constant interruptions and the nasaliness. Yes, so Steve, clearly epic. We have ranted on the audio capabilities of GarageBand on the GBU show so many times. If you want a song to sound good, it's on you, not the door. Absolutely. I 100% agree. Yes, and I think a lot of folks, it's nice to be able to blame the gear and say, I would be making epic bangers, except I'm using this GarageBand software. If I had a Pro Tools rig, just watch how good my songs would be. It doesn't really work that way. My man Rick Lisk, it's still a very good way for non-musicians to make music. I agree with Pete though, and Rick is a great example of why GarageBand is great. It is the universal. I can't think of what I'm trying to say, but it does bring together all sorts of folks because you can like Rick always tells the story and it's I'll do it briefly here and probably not do it justice, but Rick's a gamer and he was like looking, he's like, oh, what's this GarageBand game? This is a music based game. And he goes in there and he's like, oh, how do I win? And he's like, oh, I don't win, I build songs. And ever since then he's been making his own tracks in GarageBand, and I think that that is awesome. And if you haven't checked out Rick's music, check him out. Rick Lisk, I think he's the only Rick Lisk going around on YouTube and Facebook. Find his songs, very cool stuff. Max Ellis, it's not about what door's the best, it's about what lets you maximize your creativity and workflow. See, you said in one sentence what I tried to say in about 10 minutes. So, yes, that's 100% correct. There is no best. It's kind of like music. There's no best, it's all subjective. And actually, I'll rephrase that. When GarageBand only had 16-bit audio, you absolutely could say, hey, I want 24-bit audio, I want good quality audio. GarageBand's only 16-bit, therefore it's not as good. That's actually gone now. And what I've been saying lately is it's ones and zeros. Like it's ones and zeros. It's digital data and information, and whether that's captured on a Mac, a PC, an iPhone, an iPad, an Android tablet, it doesn't actually matter. It's the quality of the song that you write, and the quality of the playing, and a bit down to the quality of the gear. So making sure you at least have a decent microphone or audio interface to capture the best quality. Absolutely. James has a question here. How do you save a producer tag and go back to it? Now, I only learned this. This is going to make you laugh. I only learned what a producer tag was like last year. So because I'm not a producer and I don't make beats and I don't do that sort of thing. I'm a singer-songwriter. I create rock music, pop music, a little bit of sort of hip-hop style music, but I didn't even know what a producer tag was. So for those like me who don't know, it's basically a little bit of audio that you play in your track so that people know you produced it. If I'm wrong on that, let me know. Just correct me on that, James. But if you do want to do something like that, there's a couple of ways. The easiest way is to have that saved as a WAV file in your GarageBand file transfer folder. Or if you're on a Mac, just have it saved in a location. And then all you need to do is import that onto an audio track and place it wherever you want it within your track. And then you're good to go. And then when you create your next track, just go back to that, import it, put it in there. The other way you can do it is create a template. So save your GarageBand project with your producer tag in there, or you can do same with anything else. If there's a particular sound you're always using or particular loops you're always using in tracks, you can save a template, or even you can even just save the track layout and format, and then just call that new song template. And then whenever you start a new song, go to that template, but don't go into it, duplicate it, and then call it new song number 14, whatever you're going to call it, and then it'll already have everything in there. So if you're producing beats and you always use an 808, you're always using 4 different drum tracks, you can set it up to have all of those in there and then have one track for your producer tag. When you get to the point you want to throw it in, you can throw it in. Hopefully that helped you. Hello, Michael here. Can you do a show on how to set up an iPad music studio focusing on using a table for iPad, keyboard controller, and accessories? That's actually a really good idea and something that I've done bits and pieces of this before, yeah? So I've done things on the gear that I use, but I think you're right. I think actually showing the full process of setting up what I currently use. So how you can use a USB hub, a Lightning to USB adapter, and then plug in a MIDI keyboard controller, an audio interface, microphone, and have your own portable setup. So yes, good idea, and something that I will do. I've got a couple of weeks off from the day job at the moment, so I've got more time than I normally do. Steve here, I agree. If creativity, you want to change the tempo of time signatures, etc., GarageBand might not be your DAW. Yes, so there's definitely pros and cons. There's definitely things that GarageBand can and can't do, and is good at and is not so good at. So agree with all of those. We are a little bit behind because I've still got tip of the week, plug-in of the week, and resource of the week. So we're going to have to move through. This may be maybe a little bit longer than usual. We try to keep these to 30 minutes. We may push it a little bit today, maybe 35 or 40. But let's move on. What is the tip of the week? Tip of the week is keyboard shortcuts. So keyboard shortcuts, you might think, well, I'm on an iPad or an iPhone. How can I use keyboard shortcuts? You can actually plug in a USB keyboard or a Bluetooth keyboard and use that. So if you've got one of the cases that has a keyboard, or if you've got a separate standalone Bluetooth keyboard like the K480, the Logitech one that I use, or if you've got a USB keyboard and mouse, you can plug those in and start using them. Now, I've done a complete video on keyboard shortcuts, and I even have over on my website. I didn't really plan this out too well, but let's just bring it up here. By the way, this is going to be for iOS. I know that the Mac also has keyboard shortcuts, and again, I'm so sorry that I'm so iOS centric, but it's kind of what I know. But as I mentioned before, we will get some we'll get someone from the world of GarageBand for Mac on the show very soon. Patrick, if you're listening, Dean Davis, if you're listening, let me know if you can come along, guest host the show one week. It would be great to have you on board. But here is what I did way back when. If I share my screen, might actually help. We'll share that one. So this is what I put together, and this is actually over on my website. If you go to studiolivetoday.com, in fact, let's just show you how I got there. Studiolivetoday.com. And up the top here under links, there's a few interesting things. This is where I've got sort of MIDI buyer's guide. I've got some USB drive links, but we've also got this one here, GarageBand iOS keyboard shortcuts. So I did a video about how to use it. You can see me there. I've got my USB keyboard with my iPhone. But if you follow this link, it is a handy dandy PDF document for all of the keyboard shortcuts. So does anyone still have printers these days? Print it out, or you can have it on your desktop there ready to go. But you can see you can do a bunch of cool stuff. You can navigate around your track. You can select different regions. You can do splitting. You can cut and copy and paste, of course, with your Command C, Command V, all of that sort of thing. And the good news is, if you're using a Windows keyboard, I've put the Windows shortcuts, because Command basically becomes Windows if you're using that, and Option becomes Alt. So I've interpreted those over so that you can actually get there. And the other good thing is that if you're in any application on, I'm not sure if it's on the Mac, definitely on iOS, if you just hold down the command, is it command key? Is it the Apple key, that weird looking one? Hold down that one, I think it's command, then it actually brings up. So just hold it down, it'll pop up and tell you the most useful shortcuts that you can use. So there you go, keyboard shortcuts. If you've never used a keyboard, especially with your iPhone or iPad before, very, very handy. But if you're using it on your Mac, get used to learn your keyboard shortcuts, because it can really speed up your workflow if you know how to just create a new track, go to the start of the track, hit record. If you don't have to be clicking around with your mouse the whole time, it can just make it a lot better for you. I'm always forgetting to drink my coffee, and then I get to the end of a show and it's a cold coffee. Jade says, I love my keyboard shortcuts. Yes, I can imagine that you would be a machine when you moving around the keyboard, Jade. David Anthony, you might need a camera person to video you in your workflow. That's actually a good point. I have been getting my daughter to help me out at school holidays at the moment. So she's 10 and she's wanting to start doing things, and let's be honest, wants to start earning money because she wants to buy her own iPad. So yes, she takes after me. So maybe I need to get her to do some videographing work. Alex has a question here. Did anyone try to get MIDI export from GB? I'm going to test a kind of workaround using the Audio Bus app and some other doors soon. We'll give feedback. Very cool. Yeah, I know, Jade, I think you've tried a little bit of MIDI work and trying to do things with MIDI. I know others over on the GarageBand Users Facebook group have played around with it. Technically, MIDI is only importable in GarageBand, not exportable. But yeah, I'm sure there are ways using Audio Bus or AUM or some other app. And someone was asking me yesterday about MIDI Guitar 2 and the ability to do that, to use that as an instrument in GarageBand. And I've said I don't really know, but I'm sure with AUM or Audio Bus it would be possible, because anything that can send audio can be picked up there. Let's continue on. The next topic we have here is the plugin of the week. So the plugin of the week is the FAC Maxima by Fred Anton Corvest. So if you've been using GarageBand on your iPhone or your iPad for a while, you would be aware, someone's breaking in, you would be aware of FAC, the FAC plugins by Fred Anton Corvest. The FAC Maxima is probably my favorite of the FAC plugins. It is a sound loudener. That's the way I look at it. It's a compressor. It's kind of a limiter. It just makes things sound really rocking. So it's fantastic on drums, fantastic on guitars and vocals. It's pretty versatile. You can use it on pretty much anything. So I highly recommend it. And Fred is actually a really cool guy. So you can check out all of his other plugins as well. I haven't reviewed a bunch of them, but I know Doug over at the Sound Test Room has reviewed a bunch. So if you search FAC, Fred Anton Corvest, and all of his plugins, you will find them. I think they're only iOS at the moment. So apologies again for the Mac folks. I know this has been very iOS centric here today, but there's similar sort of plugins. Clevegrand actually make, I know I always talk about Clevegrand, but that's because I love them. They make the Corvest, which is a really cool compressor and they make their EQ, which I've forgotten the name of their EQ, but it's a good EQ. So if you're looking for compressors and EQs, the FAC Maxima is cool. And yeah, if you're on a Mac, Clevegrand, I always recommend them. We are at the end of the show, so we're going to what is the last one? Yes, GarageBand Resource of the Week. So we've talked in the previous weeks about the GarageBand guide with Patrick. We've talked about I forgot now. Go back and watch them. We've go back and watch the other three shows. I think Dan Baker, Dan Baker and Dean Davis. So three of the websites, three of the YouTube channels that I really like. This week I'm going to throw out there the GarageBand users Facebook group. Yes, I know it's low hanging fruit, but as I mentioned at the start, if you are looking for assistance with GarageBand, you can come to me and ask me questions. I always love questions and I try to answer them as best I can. As soon as they get too curly and complicated, I say, this needs the gurus over at the GarageBand users Facebook group. So I send folks over there. The other place, if you're not a Facebook fan, you don't want to do the Facebook thing, the Reddit, GarageBand subreddit over on Reddit is also a good option. But yes, shout out to my friends over at the GarageBand users Facebook group. And yes, we are talking about iOS mostly here, but a little bit of Mac as well. Jade says, I've tried everything to export MIDI from GarageBand. So far, it's been impossible, which is not good. Yeah, so hopefully we can get that. Hopefully there's a solution. We would love some MIDI exporting ability because I've had folks that have said, I've just recorded a part and I just want to get that part out. Like, it should be as simple as that, right? Anyway. Okay, that is going to have to do it here for the show. We are already running over time. We're about 5 minutes over. So thank you, everyone, for being here. I hope you enjoyed this. If you got some value out of the video, if you had a bit of fun, if you learned something new, hit the like button. That just tells me that I should keep doing these videos and that you appreciate them. And I appreciate you. And you can head over to studiolivetoday.com. You can check out my gear guide. You can check out the merchandise. You can join the mailing list, which I must send out I don't think I've sent out a newsletter in 2020, but I will do soon. You can do all of those good things over at studiolivetoday.com. Thanks everyone for being here. Have a great week, and I'll see you next time.